Hi, and welcome to the Gen X podcast. My name is Evan,
And I'm Brady.
and we are happy to be with you again in the new year. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go along here. For informational purposes, like we do every time, Gen X are people born from 1965 until 1980. And in fact, it's funny, Brady, just the other day I was looking at a form. It didn't ask your specific age, which was interesting. It asked, like, what age range were you in? And it wasn't like 55 to 65. It was, what year were you born? And the ranges were 65 to 80, 80 to 94, whatever. So they were looking for what generation
Oh, that's
you are
interesting.
specifically. And I'd never seen that before. It's a good way to get some kind of an idea about a person, maybe about
Right.
their life experience without giving away their exact age, right? Which is maybe a
Yeah.
little bit personal for some people.
Yeah.
So they were going for Gen Xers there, but um, to the audiences, if this is your first show, you got to go back and watch the first episode, so you kind of are up to speed on who we are and what we do. But we're just two regular guys, and we talk about things from a Gen X perspective. So we talk about current events from a Gen X perspective, and then we have some segments in the show where we talk about some other things that you might find interesting. If you're not a Gen Xer, you still might find it interesting because maybe you'll learn a very special something about people that you know, and you might be able to relate to them better, or you might just laugh at us and mock us. We're okay with that too. We're Gen Xers. We don't care.
Right.
You're free to mock us. And the ground rules are we just talk organically about whatever we bob and weave. We're not PC or woke, so you won't be bothered by that stuff. We usually don't swear, so you could probably listen to it in the car with your kids in the back seat. And to be honest, if your kids are in the back seat of your car while you're listening to us, pretty sure they have headphones on and they're playing video games. So that's probably how that goes, right? Hey, so current events, we've been talking a little bit about sports in the past, and the college football playoffs have advanced now to the semifinals. And I was a little bit saddened because the team that I support, Arizona State, was defeated in double overtime by Texas. And there were some very questionable calls in that game, including a no call on a targeting, which pretty much
Defeat,
everybody.
they were defeated by Texas and the officials, I think. Is that what
Yeah,
you said?
exactly. The officials, I think the officials' uniforms instead of black and white were burnt orange and white, so that might have been a tip off. I don't know. But anyway, it was that was disappointing, although I have to say Arizona State presented themselves very well. They played a very hard game. They came back, they took it to double overtime. Remember, this is a team that was picked to finish last, 16 out of 16 in the Big 12. They won the conference and made it to the quarterfinals.
Right.
That's a pretty amazing achievement. And I was talking today to somebody else about Kenny Dillingham, the coach of ASU, and what a great leader he is because he didn't make excuses, which is amazing. Because if you listen to some of those SEC coaches, they seem to have a lot of excuses when they lose. Even when they win, sometimes they have excuses. But he said, that's on me. The loss is on me. It's not the players, not the referees, not my assistant coaches. The calls that were made by me. I take full responsibility for the loss, which I just love when a coach does that or any kind of a leader who
Right.
takes full responsibility for things and doesn't pass the buck. And that's just cheap to do that, right? So there were definitely questionable calls. The head of the Big 12 conference even wrote and sort of petitioned the college football playoff about what are you guys thinking targeting is? Because that's that play, everything that happened is exactly what's in the rule book, right?
Right.
And supposedly it was reviewed, so it wasn't even like bang bang. They got to look at it.
Yeah.
Sounds like SEC bias, and there's been a lot of talk on social media about because ESPN is beholden to the SEC because they have a huge contract with them. So they've kind of been pimping SEC teams and everything. So they didn't even talk about it that much during the broadcast. about how Texas may be stealing this with a bad call or whatever. So I don't know if it'll get fixed. We'll see. Did you have a chance to catch any of the games last week?
Yeah,
Do you have any thoughts on any of those?
definitely. One thing that comes to mind is ASU had such a long
A
layover,
break. Yeah.
and when you look at that game and how two plays, two touchdowns for
Yeah,
Texas,
right away.
it shows with pros is one thing, but college kids, when you give them a
Mm.
couple weeks off and they're not at game speed,
Yeah.
they're playing another team
Yeah.
was at game speed. It's going to take 1 to 2 quarters to get up to speed, and that was more than the
That was
difference.
it, right? Yeah, that was the difference in the game. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was going to talk about it when we talk about pro football. So I got to give it up to you and your Detroit Lions. You took care of business against the Vikings this last week. All the cards were on the table there for that, for the number one seed. Detroit has never been a number one. Detroit has never been a number one seed, and they've never won 15 games. So, an historic season for the Detroit Lions that will all come to an end in 2 weeks from now. And but here's the thing, just what you said, Brady. I was thinking about it. So they are going to have a two week layoff right before they play again, and we've seen in the past in the NFL that has bitten a lot of teams. Right? They get out of their routine. They have the week off and other teams are playing and on top of their game. And sometimes teams come out a little bit slow after that bye. So it wouldn't surprise me if both Kansas City and Detroit struggle early in their first games. They don't even know who they're going to play yet, but they may struggle a little bit just to crack the rust off of the players. So
Yeah. I think in Detroit's situation, because of how many players are hurt, if they can
probably a good thing.
get 1 or 2 extra guys back, it'd be all for them having as long a layover as possible. But yeah, you're right. It's you just never know. And I think coaches struggle with, hey, do we play our last guys? Do we give them time off? Is that going to make us rusty? And they're constantly trying to weigh that and balance it. But
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, they're professionals. It shouldn't matter, but it's human nature, right? It's just a human thing. Now, I got to say one other thing about this that really bothered me, and I was thinking it's not in my get off my lawn segment, but it's something that really bothered me. Kansas City sat their starters and they allowed Denver to blow them out. And I think just despite Cincinnati and to keep them out of the playoffs because they're afraid of Cincinnati.
hmm,
They're not going to admit that. But Cincinnati has some incredibly talented players that are hard to deal with. And I
yeah,
think Kansas City wanted to take their chances against the other teams in the playoffs. I don't recall. Do you, when we were kids, teams resting players at the end of seasons, even if they'd clinch spots and stuff? I don't recall that.
I don't think players would go for it. I think players were, they had a tough mindset of get me out there. I want to beat. We can beat anybody anytime, and doesn't matter how much rest we get. Yeah. I don't remember sitting out Barry Sanders,
Mm-mm.
anybody.
No.
You know, um, yeah, yeah. That is strange how that's
And
really.
I would say that maybe players today are soft because of that, but um, it's just that's a very different scenario. It's like watching, the Pro Bowl, which they've essentially canceled now because the players just don't play. Everybody's such a wuss. They're afraid of getting hurt, right? Because there's so much money on the line. Back in the day, players they didn't play 100% in the Pro Bowl, but they were going 80, 85%,
All right.
right?
Yeah.
And it was an actual game. It wasn't just guys standing around, right? It became just a mockery of football, I think. And even back in the day, I was thinking in the 70s, do you remember this at all? They used to have super team competitions. They had Battle of the Network Stars, and then they had like battle of the super teams. So it would be Cincinnati Reds versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they would have the obstacle course and the running and rowing and weightlifting and all of that. And then, there may be 8 or 10 players from each of the teams. And then they would do these competitions and then one team would win. And they would do that after the season and after the Pro Bowl. No way you could get guys to do that now because they'd be afraid they would get hurt,
That's right.
right? They wouldn't do it. And, the winning team got an extra $10,000, right? Well, to these guys, you know, they throw that type of cash into the waste bin if it's in
Yeah,
their way, right? Like that's nothing to them. And I was
yeah,
thinking about that because so Brock Purdy's about to get paid, right? Like he's gonna get probably 50 million, whatever. He's gonna get a huge contract, obviously. And some of these other guys getting the contracts. And it'll be interesting to see some players after they get the big contract tend to not have a good year,
yeah,
right? It's a little easy to get fat and happy with that kind of money. I think the average person can't even comprehend what that would be like,
yeah.
right? You know, your check is $3 million, right? Like, can you imagine every week you get a check for $3 million during the season or whatever it is? It's hard to comprehend,
Yeah.
something like that. So
Well,
anyway,
don't forget what Patrick Ewing said, and when they were talking about that, he said, "Well, we make a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money too." That
so we
was
should feel sorry for them because they have to spend a lot of money.
right. That was
Speaking
his.
of now here's something for you too. Speaking of feeling sorry for people, the California wildfires in LA kicked off last night, and today I was looking at the images on X, and it's insane. I mean, half the city is just burnt to the ground. It's unbelievable. Now, it's mostly because the state is a big steaming pile of crap in terms of how they do everything. They pour rainwater into the ocean because they don't build dams to store it. It's like the idiocy of that state is to blame for that, for not being. And then I saw today that they didn't even have water to pump on the fires. So there was nothing they could do. They're just letting it burn because the fire hydrants don't have water in it, right? It's the most mismanaged
Oh,
state and city in the country, probably in a lot of respects. And you've got multi-million-dollar homes burning down. And I'm sure there's a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm having a hard time feeling too sorry for them that their $10 million mansion in the hills burned down. Ooh, so sad. But there are people there who aren't that rich. And I also heard the insurance companies canceled on most of them like 6 months ago.
that's what I read that too. They they can.
So if you have, and I was reading up on it because I couldn't believe it. If you have a mortgage and your house burns down and you don't have wildfire insurance, you still have to pay your mortgage on
Yeah,
something that doesn't even exist anymore because
yeah,
the bank is holding, that. It's an
right.
unbelievable situation. It's tremendously tragic, no matter whose property is burning down. But I'm sure there's people out there like, well, it's a little bit hard for me to feel sorry for these billionaires and
Yeah.
their houses burning down. And it's partly because of the people they themselves voted into office to run the city and the state, right?
That's the key. That's the key because I heard someone explained it to me that they have these exorbitant amount of taxes they have to pay.
Yes, like $100,000 property tax.
Yeah, it's insane. And then they don't invest that into, properly.
No, it's all a big money laundering scheme, right? That stuff never goes back into infrastructure. They California even passed a law to build dams and store the water and everything like 8 years ago. And of course, has it been done? No.
Yeah,
Where'd all the money go?
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. And I feel sorry for the people who genuinely are see the issue, see the problem, and are beside themselves and can't move and can't get out of there and they're stuck dealing with this state that just is always dropping the ball and kicking it.
Yeah, constantly. It's you'd think one of these times, one of these events would make people think about who they vote for, but it doesn't seem to matter. I find that just unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
you have to when you read articles and you hear, in San Francisco, they're no longer arresting or stopping bums from pooping in the streets,
yeah.
eating in the streets. It's like,
Doesn't like a little bell go off in your head like, hey, maybe that's not a smart way to do things?
probably not a good thing. And you can just see the councilmen sitting around in a circle, spending a day discussing this and voting on it. And at some point, the people that live there that have $1 million homes, and there's homeless all around, and drug needles, and just feces, and at some point they got to say, you know what, let's get some new leadership in here and see what can someone else can do.
I think they've just been a frog in a kettle, right? And they're just completely brainwashed. And, all of that stuff doesn't matter. They want to look good on The View or
Yeah,
in a magazine or something that they're socially aware or whatever. And meanwhile, everybody in their neighborhood just lost their house. Thank you very much, right? Like just it's
yeah,
it's insanity. There's no other way to explain it, right?
yeah. Well, how about these random stabbings that are happening? I don't
Yeah,
know
what is with that?
any of them in the news. Vegas showgirl walking down the street,
Yeah.
some illegal just runs out and starts stabbing her with a knife. And today there was one in England where a guy popped out and started stabbing someone. I think he got, well, maybe it wasn't today. He got sentenced, I think 40, something like 45 years, which in Britain is
That's
huge.
yeah, they never seem to punish anybody there. But I got an idea. I was thinking about an idea. So I like things might change in about 12 days about how that stuff goes, right? I think there's a new sheriff in town. I don't know if you saw that blurb in the paper, Brady. That's a joke from Brian Regan. Sorry, Brian, I stole your joke there, but we went to a concert of his and he came out and it was 2017, just after Trump had been elected, I think, the first time. And he came out and he said, I've never been so afraid to bring up a topic before. And he's like, but we have a new president. I don't know if you saw that little blurb in the paper. And then he dropped it because he doesn't do politics, right? Which is smart if
Right,
you're a comedian, I think, because you're going to offend half your audience no matter what you say,
right.
right? But I think that might change. But so everybody in California whose house burned down should be offered a home in Greenland when it is made part of the United States. So I think that would be a great idea. We'll give you 1,000 acres in Greenland, and you can take your $100 million there and go build a house in Greenland. And I guarantee it won't burn to the ground
There
in
you go.
Greenland.
Yeah,
So there you go. I think that's actually a funny idea. I've often thought that the United States should buy Baja California,
yeah,
right? There's like 10 people who live there. If you take out Tijuana and Cabo, there's nobody lives in the rest of Baja California. It has almost zero cities. It doesn't
yeah,
have much in the way of resources, but it has like 1,000 miles of coast,
yeah.
which could be developed by us
Right.
if we just took it over. And maybe the people from California we could create a new state and call it Baja California, and the people who wanted to live free could move to Baja California. So if President Trump, if you're listening to this podcast, I implore you, go ahead, buy Greenland and then buy Baja California while you're at it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, what would it cost? Like a sack of marbles? I mean,
It-
some old baseball cards? How much could it possibly cost? Elon
yeah.
Musk could buy it for crying out loud.
Oh, we'll add Canada and Mexico later. We'll get.
Yeah, that's that's later. Maybe Barron Trump during his administration could
Yeah.
buy Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
I saw that whole debate going back and forth about Canada, and it's like, here's what you do: put it to a vote. You're right. It's like, let's see what the people in Canada want to do.
Well, I think Trump is smart in that as a businessman, he's basically floating it out there. Hey, the tariffs are going to be so bad that we'll gladly take Canada as a state. And now they're all riled up and angry. So now when he goes
Yeah.
to the negotiating table, he'll say, okay, we're not going to take it as a state, but here's the tariffs instead.
Right.
Oh, lo and behold, he got his deal done that he wanted.
We're
Uh,
already subsidizing the country with military protection and like a half a dozen other things. I read an article about that, about how the US actually subsidizes a lot of things that happen in Canada.
yeah,
There's probably resources there that the Canadian government simply can't, afford. The whole country doesn't even have as many people in it as California,
right.
right? It's this gigantic country with like six cities, major cities, and that's it,
Yeah.
right? Nobody, Great Bear Lake or what, nobody lives there,
No,
right? The only people who ever go there are people on the TV show Alone when
yeah,
they're out there and trying to survive in this wilderness that's a frozen wasteland for 9 months out of the year. But
yeah,
anyway, there was one other thing related. Well, one other thing related to politics is Jimmy Carter passed away. Was it a week ago? And there was some stuff there. Now, as a Gen Xer, I think it's pretty much unanimous that that was up until recent times, that was the worst presidency that most people had experienced in their lifetime.
yeah, yeah,
And I would say the same. Like that was my junior high days, I think, essentially during the Jimmy Carter administration, and things were terrible.
yeah,
Uh, uh, Interest rates, there was no gas that had to have been manufactured. There's plenty of oil. We're never running out of oil. That's a myth. It's
mm,
been 50 years. We didn't run out, we were going to run out of oil in 1978. That's 50 years ago,
right.
right? We still haven't run out of oil. So that was a myth. That was a lie,
Yeah,
clearly. And so why did gas prices go up? Why were there lines at gas pumps? We had our hostages taken. That was a debacle.
yeah,
Just everything about that time period was a complete disaster. Terrible president. Now, here's what some people have said. Yeah, but he was a nice guy, I think. Now, here's the thing. You trash and burn the country. Are you still a nice guy?
yeah.
Right?
Well,
You foist upon the American people a lie that you know is a lie. Are you still a nice person? And I heard a story I read in a book about Jimmy Carter from a Secret Service agent that said he had this thing where he would get off the plane and he would carry his own suitcases. So the media would show him coming down the stairs and he would be carrying his own suitcases. As soon as he got out of camera range, he'd drop them and an aide would pick them up for him. It was
oh,
all show. It was
huh,
just a show. I'm a common man. I'm a peanut farmer, yada, 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 right? So most people bought it that that was who he really was. Now, his life after being a president, Habitat for Humanity, it's a great cause. I think he probably did some good there. It's like, but let's not be too quick to give him a pass for the disaster that he created for the 4 years while he was in office. That's my 2 cents.
yeah. I think that he genuinely was a nice guy, came across as a soft-spoken, nice guy. I think the problem is he's a bad leader. And I think that's an issue we have nowadays is people want to think and make decisions based on emotion.
Yeah.
They don't, they like that warm fuzziness. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't have that kind of warm, fuzzy, emotional connection with them, then they don't care what their policies are. They don't care what direction they go. They're never going to support that person. And I think Carter's a great example of somebody who was warm and fuzzy, easy to emotionally connect with, but somebody who's just a bad leader, bad policies, and it bit everybody in the country.
Yeah. Everybody. That's the thing, right? It's like, I don't know if I can't call a guy a nice guy if he destroys the country in 4 years, right? It's like maybe you are in your personal life. The other thing was, he'd put a sweater on sometimes for when he was going to do a speech to the country or whatever. But that's, again, that was all scripted and planned. That like, well, you'll look more casual and more approachable if you just get stop doing that, right? It's like it's like I love that, Trump went out and he had a suit on when he was hitting tennis balls with Serena Williams or whatever the other day. Like he didn't put a sweater on. Oh, look at me. I'm like a regular tennis player. No, he left his suit and tie on. It's like because he doesn't, the only time you see him not in a suit and tie is when he's golfing,
Yeah,
right? Where it makes sense. It's not a politically planned, oh, I'm going to wear this to make people think something,
yeah,
right? And then from a Gen X perspective, right? Who cares? Like, lead the country. I don't care
right.
whether you're wearing a suit or a sweater or what. That's meaningless. Stop trying to manipulate me with stupid stuff like that, right? All
Yeah.
right, we got three questions, Brady.
Okay,
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, speaking of presidential stuff, as we were, what was the first presidential election you remember?
Oh boy. Well, so I was pretty young when it was Carter versus Reagan. Um, I don't remember being outraged by pork at age 5. So,
Right.
but I do remember Reagan and Mondale. That's probably the earliest I could go, and I think a big reason is because I remember how important it was to my parents that
Mm,
Reagan get a second term. And I think Mondale kind of the fear was we're going to go back to Carter 2.0,
yeah.
his policies with Mondale. So that's probably the earliest I'd say. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I do remember. It's funny how your brain stores these little nuggets when you're a
Yeah.
kid. But I do remember how rude the uh, the media was when Reagan was just elected. He basically was doing a press conference, and the media was giving him crap and being
Yeah.
rude. And the very last question, because he said, "Okay, I have to go. It's time. I have to go." And as he's trying to pull away, one of the guys yells out another question. Of course, he ignores him that he has to go and says, um, Do you have anything you want to say to Minnesota, Mr. President?" That was like one of the states that didn't vote for
Yeah.
him. But
Yeah.
that's just that, hey, let's gonna stick it to you. And
Right.
he handled it with grace.
Sure.
I think it'd be very difficult nowadays to really hold your tongue when you have that, somebody trying to stick it to you like that. But that stuck out to me as, wow, that's the president of the United States. And you're basically just, throwing out an insult, a barb. I thought that didn't sit with me well.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I remember Nixon's second term, his election vaguely, and same thing, it's like you're taking what your parents, you're hearing their conversations and stuff. Uh, was disappointed when Carter beat Ford, because at the time I was thinking too, it's like that this guy doesn't, I mean, just as a kid, this guy doesn't seem like he should be president. That's all I remember. He doesn't seem presidential,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I remember thinking. And I voted in the Reagan second, Reagan Mondale. I voted in that one, in which Reagan won every state but Minnesota and the District of Columbia.
Mm.
I mean, it was the biggest wipeout ever for all the reasons that you said, right? We were coming out of Carter and nobody wanted to go back to that. It
Yeah.
was just so bad that, things with Russia were tense and it was just a disaster. And it's amazing, but, by the end of the 80s, the Cold War was over. And I mean, it just, the transformation during the 80s for us Gen Xers was just an amazing thing to go from the end of the 70s to the middle to the end of the 80s and see how things had improved across the board, across the world, for crying out loud, on almost every level. It was pretty astounding, right? All right, second question. When you were a kid, when did your family take the Christmas tree down? And
Oh,
was it a real tree?
yeah. Real tree. We'd go out to a tree farm, and
Yeah, same here.
it was cool. They would take you out on a horse-drawn carriage around, and you'd go out to kind of the forest there, and you'd tell them what tree, and you could cut it down, or if you couldn't, they would do it, and then they would
Tied
tie.
to the roof of your car.
Yeah, they tie it up and have it all set and ready for you. It was fun. And then I remember there was one winter, it was so miserable. It was
Oh
so,
gosh, yep.
and the snow, and we were like all miserable. So that was the last time we, we
That
did
was
that.
it. Dad's like, we're getting a plastic one next year. It's like it's why I relate to Christmas Vacation because they're out there in the snow, freezing to death, and the daughter, is frozen from the waist down, right? The whole thing. Her eyes are frozen, Clark. And
So
then he
fun.
forgets a saw. And my dad forgot a saw one time when we went out too. And I mean, he was so mad. So he had to shag somebody else down in this Christmas tree farm to borrow their saw
Yeah.
and then, strap it to the hood of the car and drive 40 miles back to our house, right? But in our house, we always took it down on New Year's Day. What about you guys?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was around that time. I don't know that it was a specific day that had to go down, but I think it was the bulk trash that was coming.
That's right. Throw it out by the curb.
Yeah, it had to go out at the end of the street. But yeah, it's funny how that movie, Christmas Vacation, even like the dog drinking the water out of the bottle.
Oh
That was,
gosh, that happened to us too. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
It's
and
just
it's funny how they connected with that whole experience.
it was very similar to my experience. That's why I think Gen Xers love that movie. They really relate to that whole the dad who's so excited about, everything related to Christmas, but it's kind of a pain. Like
Yeah.
all of it's kind of a pain,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah. How much did our
So
parents really enjoy? Oh,
yeah, they put
yeah.
on a good face for us kids, right? I don't know that they really appreciated, I could see the look on my dad's face sometime when the snow was like 2 feet deep and maybe this isn't the most exciting thing to be doing with
Yeah.
my 5-year-old son walking around potentially dying here at the Christmas tree farm. So, what was my last question is what was your favorite game as a kid?
Yeah. So we didn't really play much in the way of board games, but I do remember we had a hockey game where I don't know if you ever had one of these,
With the
but
sticks and yeah.
yes, you had a goalie and you
Hmm.
had, gosh, I
It was
can't
like
remember.
foosball, but it was hockey,
Yes, yeah.
right?
And my brother and I got really good at it. And it was pretty interesting how
You
you could,
spin the players, right?
yes, you spin the,
Yeah.
you can pass the puck and then try and get it around his guy
Yeah.
still, but you try and do a one timer, flick it to the
Yeah.
next
That's
guy.
right.
Oh, I love that. We used to
That
have,
was a fun game. I'm pretty sure I had that game as well.
yeah,
And our friend did or something, and we would play it, especially in Minnesota, right, where everything's hockey anyway.
yeah,
So if it was too cold out or nobody had shoveled the pond next to your house where you could play hockey, you'd play indoors and you'd play that little. It's
yeah,
not, and just for those people who don't know what we're talking about, it wasn't electronic in any way. It was just completely manual,
yeah.
but you could slide the players backwards and forwards and then spin them to shoot a little puck. And it looked like a rink. The whole setup was like a rink and stuff. And I don't remember like if it was sponsored by the NHL or anything. I can't remember if like there were teams or
I don't think so. I think they were just colored.
generic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was fun. I remember if you got the puck, if you were able to kind of maneuver it around to
Yeah.
your forward or your center there, he's there.
Yep.
The other guy's got his goalie just waiting for you to, it was really, I really enjoyed that
It
one.
makes me want to look on eBay and see how much those cost now, right?
Yeah,
All those toys that we used to have, because I'll bet somebody's got one for sale. They probably still make it. Some of those places, Sharper Image and stuff, sometimes have special editions of old games,
yeah.
right? Like I saw you could buy like the original Trivial Pursuit, like a new version, like completely new, wrapped in a box, right? But
Oh,
it's the 1984 or whatever, whenever it came out. I don't remember when it came out, but it's like the original one. So all the questions are about Cyndi Lauper's song from 1983. was this hit? You're like, and now, of course, when you play it now, like I have that original version, and no one in my family knows any of the, but I'm just like, I'm whipping them out, no problem. I know all of them, right? It's like Huey Lewis in the news, it's all of those. All
Yeah.
right, what questions you got for me?
Yeah. Well, did you have a favorite game that you like to play as a kid?
Um, yeah, like card game, my family played Rook. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
specific card game, and I don't even know what you would compare it to, but they're numbered cards, and you have a kitty, and I don't even I probably couldn't even play it now because I forgot the rules. That was fun. I always liked Yahtzee.
Hmm.
That was a game that I liked, and I had uh, the a little pool table, like one of those mini ones, and a little pool stick that was like this
Yeah.
big, and the balls were like this big, and actually my son has one of those. We gave him one of those when he quite a few years ago, but I loved that thing. That was fun. I used to play that all the time, just a little mini billiards table, and that was kind of fun. So those are some of the ones I can remember anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Did you guys have any pets growing up?
Yeah, almost always. So I think when I was 7, no, maybe 6, we got our first dog, and it lived for like 11 months and then got run over by a car.
Oh, geez.
Which, well, I think we think it did. I don't know that it ran away or something.
Huh.
It had issues, physical issues. I don't know. This is weird. But from that time on, then we always had a dog, right? And all the way, I think there's only like a 3-year span of my life when I was in college or graduate school that I did not have a pet.
Hmm.
And then, since then, so since probably 92 or something, I have had at least one, if not multiple dogs for
Mhm.
my rest of my entire life. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. You're not a cat person then?
absolutely not. Sorry, cat people. I can't stand cats.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah. How about on the Christmas vacation side of things? What was your some of your favorite family trips that you guys took?
Yeah, we usually for Christmas it was usually we lived in Minnesota most of the time when I was a kid. Had grandparents who lived there, so sometimes it was just going to their house, like, 2 suburbs away. But other times we would drive to Wisconsin Rapids, where my dad's family was from, which was, I don't know, maybe 3 hours. I can't remember exactly how long it took to get there. So we would go there. And then I had cousins who lived in Rockford, Illinois. And so sometimes we would go, that's not a really fun place to visit necessarily. It's Rockford, Illinois. In fact, that my cousin Tim was just in town this last Saturday. Hadn't seen him for like 8 years. So we were talking about, some things from Rockford in the old days, Christmas at their house and whatnot. But I think I may have mentioned it previously. One year when I was 10 or 11, we drove all the way to Florida and for Christmas, and that was awesome. And I had never been to Florida, and of course we went to Disney World and the beach and Cape Canaveral, right? Like that stuff was pretty cool as a 10-year-old kid to see that. It was a long drive, but that was fun. I remember we got up really early in the morning and we started, and we stopped at friends' houses along the way and Motel Sixes or whatever it was back in the day, right? I
Yeah.
have some pictures from that trip, but yeah, that was probably my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. When you go from Minnesota or Michigan down to Florida, it's your skin is usually translucent.
Oh my gosh. We've got pictures of like when we first got there and we were just like absolutely translucent, right?
Uh,
And got burned, of course, 2 seconds, from being on there. Everybody had a sunburn, which is funny right there. And back then, they didn't really even have suntan lotion, like
you know,
protection. It was suntan lotion to get tan.
right. Yeah.
It was like it was to enhance the sun, not to block it, you know.
Yeah,
So anyway, that was yeah, that was our experience for sure.
yeah,
Hey, so for Get Off My Lawn, which is a segment we like to do, which is a pet peeve where we compare some things from our past and things that have changed for now. But there's a, I came across this. This is a post, I think it was on Instagram, and it sparked me thinking about a pet peeve that I had. And so I don't know if you can, if that's legible to anybody out there, but it's like it says basically, if anybody wants to know why Gen Xers are always mad, which I think is funny, because I guess we are to some, it seems like we are to people who are constantly worried about sort of being soft and sensitive. They think that's us being mad.
yeah,
But in reality, I don't think it is that we're mad. It's that we're disgusted with stupid stuff and we don't have patience for nonsense.
right.
That comes across as mad, but it's not like we're really mad. But so her point was we are upset is because we had to have a record collection and then we had to buy everything new to get tapes and then we had to buy everything new to get CDs and then we had to buy everything new to get MP3s and
Yeah,
now we have to subscribe to Spotify or Pandora to or Apple to get the music. So we've had to buy our favorite music catalog like 5 times in our life. Same
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And it
It's
seems like the record industry should have said, "Hey, if you bought the album, the tape is at a discounted price. Bring your album in and we'll give you the tape. And
right.
if you have the tape or the album or the CD, we'll give you the MP3 for free.
Yeah,
And all of those things that you have, you should be able to get also the digital version from Spotify or something for free as well. I already bought the license for that music,
yeah. That's
essentially.
a good idea. It's yours no matter what. Yeah, what platform it's on. Or now after you've gotten rid of your 8 tracks and
Yeah,
your
8-track, forgot that one. Yeah.
vinyl, now those are worth a
Oh,
lot,
they're worth a fortune.
and they're all gone and thrown away. And you've got it's like, yeah,
If I kept a couple of albums just for the novelty sake. I think I have U2 Joshua Tree, which was from 1987, and I still have that vinyl, right? And I still have probably 100 tapes that I ripped off the Columbia Records and Tape people for, like everyone else in our generation. Taped the penny to the return thing to get my 13 tapes. But yeah, it's like I've had to buy, I've probably spent $200 on the same Commodores album like 5 times, right? It's like, Beatles albums and stuff, right? You've bought it like 6 different times. It's really frustrating, right?
yeah,
So what's funny about that is, so when I read this post, I thought, yeah, that's true. It's really frustrating. And it's not just music, right? It's VHS tapes, right? And then it was, getting HBO or whatever.
yeah,
And then you had to buy DVDs, right? And then
right,
I bought Blu-rays.
right. For a while, you had to pick HD or Blu-ray, which one?
Yeah, right. Which one is it going to be? So I picked Blu-ray. So I got Blu-rays, and then I have now gotten 4K versions of a lot of my favorite Hitchcock movies and Beverly Hills Cop and some stuff like that. I've gotten those in 4K. Like we talked about Christmas Vacation, I have that in 4K now. But also you subscribe to, Max or something like that to see these movies in 4K now too, on top of having bought the disc for the fourth time, right? And then they come out with the 30th anniversary edition that has special stuff. You and I both like Jaws. I have like 5 copies of that. I
Yeah,
have the DVD, the Blu-ray, the 4K, and then I've got like a special 4K with Dolby Atmos on it or
yeah,
whatever. So I bought that movie. I've spent $200 on that movie over the years too, just to always stay up on top of it for the stuff that I really like,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's my get off my lawn. Is there something bugging you?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind is just these corporations that are manufacturing, whether it's cars or whatever it is that you have to buy, that's a fairly sizable purchase. Everything now is built to make it look like it is the greatest uh, machine, when actually it's designed and built just well enough for you to buy it, but not to last very long. And the couple of things. One, we had a hot tub at our old house, and I'll never forget, the hot tub was having trouble heating, and so we had the hot tub repairman. Yes, they
Yeah.
do come over, and I said, well, is this thing busted? Do we need to get a new hot tub? He said, don't ever get a new hot tub. And I what are you talking
Because they
about?
won't last.
He said, here's the deal. He said, this has one heater filament. All the new ones, yeah, they have like six, and they heat the water real fast. And there's all these, computers and things in
Right,
it.
right.
But he said, there's a high probability that this is going to have problems. It's going to break down. It's going to, there's all these things that can go wrong. He goes, whereas this old one, he goes, this thing will last forever. You just, if there's ever a problem, this little piece costs this much money. Every
Yeah,
20 years or so, you replace it and you're good. And he said they do that on purpose so
sure.
that, one, you have to pay to have it repaired, but also you end up
Got
just
to buy
buying.
a new one.
Yeah. And
So it's
car,
funny you mentioned that because we had the same thing. So
yeah,
like 6 months ago, the hot tubs it wasn't heating anymore. Didn't notice it in the summer here in Arizona. Right? It stayed at 100 without the heater working. Didn't know that.
yeah,
And then the guy, same thing, got the hot tub repair guy to come out and have a look at it. And of course, what do you know? What do I know? He
yeah,
could make crap up. I don't know. I mean, I'm not disparaging the guy. I think he was probably honest, but what do I know? Right?
yeah,
I don't know. So it's like, yeah, there's the panel, the electric panel that does the switch to turn the thing on
the,
had
the fluke.
failed. Yeah, exactly. It's some made up thing, right? So he's like, we have to replace the panel and then I'll seal up some stuff where there's some minor leaks and everything. So I asked him, how long should a hot tub last? And he said, well, yeah, it really depends. He's like, I've seen ones that have been going for 30 years, right? And it's all about, upkeep and maintenance. If you keep up on it and stuff like that, it should last,
Yeah,
right? Same thing. But every time they introduce something new or, electric panel or switches or whatever else, you've just introduced a new fail point.
right,
So
right.
yada, 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 $800 later, hopefully it lasts another 20 years. It's 12 years old, so it's like, okay, but I enjoy it so much. There was no way I was going to do without it. Like, I think I would have a mental breakdown if I didn't have that thing. So,
Yeah, don't tell Roger. Yeah, but the same thing with cars. The computers now are, you think, oh, this is wonderful. I've got all this convenience and technology and all of that, but it creates such a difficulty now that you
yeah.
can't, even if you replace a battery, which I just did, I've got all these flashing
All
errors.
right, because it reset everything and oh gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
batteries don't cost $40 anymore at Sears. They cost $350.
right.
Right? It's like I found that out. I have a German car and the battery was like $350, right?
Yeah,
Because there's like 4 gazillion electronics in this thing.
yeah,
And it's running while the car's not even on. Like it has stuff is active even when the car's off,
yeah,
right? So that
yeah.
battery's working all the time. And of course, in Arizona batteries, if you get 2 or 3 years out of a battery, you're lucky. So I
Right,
don't even know how Teslas work after 3 years because everybody in Arizona knows your car battery doesn't last but 3 years,
right.
right? In the summer. So I don't even like, and of course, replacing batteries in an electric car is like $15,000.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
expensive.
That's expensive. Hey, so I got a show and tell for you, and
Oh,
our producer's telling us we have to wrap up pretty soon here, but I want to show you. So, talk about family vacations. This is something. So, I think you can see that.
Kings Island.
This
Yeah.
is used to be what I used to collect when I would go on a family vacation. These are
Yeah.
called pennants, right? And so every place that we would go, we I would buy one of these pennants. They were $1 or, $1.50 or whatever. This is Kings Island. I believe that's in Cincinnati, I think. And there's actually an episode of Brady Bunch where they go to Kings Island
Huh.
in Cincinnati, and it was a cross promotional thing, right? So I don't remember when we were there or why we were there or whatever, but they have the Screamin' Demon, which was their major roller coaster there. And I remember that was a pretty cool thing, the Screamin' Demon.
Hmm.
So I've got out in the garage, I've probably got 20 of those pennants. And
Huh.
I had them hanging in my wall, and I've got sports ones too. I've got a Vikings one, and I've got, Grand Canyon and Mount Rushmore and every other place that we went. But that's what we collected when I was a kid. Now, what we collect now is Christmas ornaments because it's kind of fun. Once a year, you pull it out. And, last year we were in Telluride and year before we were in Maui or whatever. So we have an ornament. So when you're putting the ornaments on and looking at the tree and stuff, you can kind of think back and reflect and remember your vacation. Cause, I'm not hanging pennants,
Right.
up in my living room anymore. But it was kind of a fun thing. So I thought I saw that and I thought I'd pull that out. That maybe makes people remember their childhood too, that maybe you collected pennants. Hey, tell us in the comments section, tell us what you collected as a kid on family trips. Do you remember what you collected?
Mostly it was the sports teams. It had a Chicago Bulls one and a Detroit Pistons one and a Detroit Tigers one. But yeah, I remember those, seeing those like Epcot Center when we were there. They
Yep.
had, and we got one, and yeah, that was a big thing. And they weren't, 1999 or anything.
No, exactly. That was the thing. Like even t-shirts at those places cost $30 now. It's
Yeah,
like it's a t-shirt for crying out loud. And I know the t-shirt itself costs like $2 and the
right.
printing costs like $3. That's a
Yeah,
$5 shirt and you
yeah,
pay like $30 for it.
yeah,
I was wanted to get an ASU, Big 12 championship t-shirt and they're like $35. So
yeah.
what you do is you wait like 6 months and then they got to get rid of them because nobody's going to want them next year. And then you can buy them for like $15.
Right.
So that's what I'm going to do. No one will know that you bought it 6 months, after.
Yeah.
So I'm
Uh,
not stupid out there marketing people.
we know what you're doing.
So is your show and tell your Lions hat just to
Oh,
stick it to me?
no, no, is that what that is? Is that, oh, there it is.
I'll have
Yeah,
to
no,
bring out my Vikings hat when we beat you in the NFC Championship game.
well, I got a story to tell you that you'll appreciate with this hat. I actually didn't buy this hat. This brand, it looks brand new. This hat, so at work, I was minding my own business. This was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. And one of the coworkers there knew that I was a Lions fan, and he was a very, very obnoxious Cowboys fan. So
Wait, there's something other than a obnoxious Cowboys fan?
yeah, yeah. So he was one of them, and he was talking trash because the Lions were playing the Cowboys, and Matthew Stafford was quarterback. Lions were only like 500, but he was talking trash, and so he said, well, we got to bet something. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I said, if the Cowboys win, I'll buy you a Cowboys hat, and if the Lions win, you have to buy me a Lions hat. Deal. Make sure it's
Yeah, for sure.
on the
That's a
back.
lock.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not kidding you. It Lions were down by like 17 points in the fourth quarter. We're like halfway through the fourth. I'm in the car. I'm driving to the mall to get where else do they have stores where you can get,
Right.
so I'm on my way making the drive to go there. Lions score. They get a turnover. They score again. I'm like three-quarters of the way there, and they're down by 3. There's a few minutes left. Cowboys have the ball, and and it was one of those that I'm in the parking lot waiting, like, hey, this game is still, and I'm not kidding you, the turnover, Lions score. And so I just drove home. And when I went to work the next day, I had this wait
Nice.
at work. But
Who
I
was
was,
the quarterback for that game? Because I think I remember that game actually.
oh,
That rings a bell.
yeah, I never,
Eric Hipple.
yeah, I don't remember who the Cowboys had. Yeah, gosh, and it was before Dak Prescott. I think whoever they had, but they were a decent. I mean, they were picked. They were favored to beat Detroit. But
Tony
yeah,
Romo. Is it further back than that?
who is it?
Tony Romo.
That's who it was. Yeah, yeah, I think it was Romo. Uh, and yeah, they melted. They melted down in the fourth and saved me that purchase. So I'll never forget that.
Just
Ever see that hat.
and just to stick it to Dallas fans one more time, it's like I think it was like I saw it was either the 20th or the must be the 20th anniversary of Tony Romo fumbling the he was the holder for Dallas and he fumbled it and then he got up to run it into the end zone to win the game and you could see he was running in and there was no one in front of him and I'm going to score the winning touchdown and we're going to win this game and a guy tackled him from behind, like didn't even see him come, tackled him at like the 2 yard line and they lose all because he fumbled the snap for a game winning field goal. It's like classic, right? It was just like the hey, I'm gonna score, and then no. It's like Dallas fans must have had a heart attack at that one.
Oh
Hey,
man.
those are great memories. It's always fun to reflect on fun stuff, especially highs and lows of past sporting events. As Vikings and Detroit fans, we have probably more lows than we have highs.
So
So it's
true.
pretty exciting, though, just to remind everybody this year in the NFL, the NFC North is the greatest division in the history of football. Like,
Yep.
that's not an exaggeration. It was the best division in the history of football in terms of wins. And that Detroit Minnesota game on Sunday night was the greatest regular season matchup in the history of the NFL. No two 14-win teams had ever met in an NFL regular season game prior to Sunday night.
Yeah.
So that was something else, right?
Yeah.
They may meet again. So just, be cautious there on how braggadocious you might get. Hey, just a reminder. I just have to end with that. Just a reminder for everybody, please hit subscribe and like wherever you're watching this. We're on Spotify, which is my personal favorite. You can watch us on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Amazon Music if you're in the car or iHeartRadio. And you can interact with us on X. We sometimes post funny stuff there and on Instagram. If you have thoughts, questions, you're a Dallas fan and you're mad at Brady for that story, uh, feel free to light into us. We don't care. We think that's kind of fun. We're not mad. We're not mad. We might be animated from time to time, but we're Gen Xers. So, we don't care. We don't mind a little stuff like that. Also, just a reminder, we're also on UHF channel 75 in Slaughterville, Oklahoma. We just added that station recently. So just thought you
Right.
guys would like to know that. I'd never heard of a town called Slaughterville. How would you like to put that on your resume or whatever else? Where do you live? I live in Slaughterville. Oh, it sounds like a lovely town,
Yeah.
right? So for Brady and myself and our producer, we thank you for tuning in. We want you to have fun out there, people, and but just be home before the streetlights come on. Okay, we'll
Uh,
see you next time.
all right. Have a good week, guys.
All right, we'll see you. Bye bye.